Crimson and Clover Farm, where we would normally all come in the fall and have a field trip. Today, we're going to take you on a little virtual tour of the farm in January.
And I'm Jules, and I'm really excited to go on this tour with you. We don't usually get to see the farm in the winter like this, but there's still a lot of exciting stuff going on, even when it seems like everything's asleep.
This land, thousands and thousands of years ago, was all underneath a huge lake called Glacial Lake Hitchcock. And then after Glacial Lake Hitchcock melted and left behind such rich soil, and that's why we can grow this amazing food. Different animals started to live on this land, and people lived here, the Nonotuck tribes, the Nipmuc and Pecumtuck people. When we farm here, it's really important for us to think about who was here before us, the people who tended this land for so many years, and then we think about the kind of world and the kind of land that we want to be able to give to the people who come after us.
This part of the farm is the perennial herb garden, and even though it's winter, there actually are still leaves that are sort of dried out growing on the herbs. If you look close down there, there's some mint growing as well that's still alive, that's managed to make it through the snows. So their roots stay warm underground, and then they come back in the spring, so you don't have to plant them every year. They'll just stay there all year round. I wish you were here so you could smell it, because the sage is still very fragrant even though it's been dried up for a couple of weeks now. You don't have to be a farmer to harvest these herbs. People can actually come and pick their own.
Something cool about seeing a farm in the winter is that you can see signs of all the animals that are living here and around the land. So you can see their tracks really easily in the snow.
Well, here we are in the hoop house, which is sort of like a greenhouse, but there's no extra heat coming in. It's just heated by the sun, and the heat's kept in by all this plastic that you see around me. Normally, in the growing season in the spring or the summer, there would be stuff planted in here. You'll see these strings above me. There used to be tomatoes growing in here, and these strings used to be here to hold the tomato plants up. So when tomatoes start to grow, they're small and they grow straight up, and then when the tomatoes themselves grow on the plants, they can weigh the stems down, and so they fall over if we don't have stuff to hold them up. Because it's the winter, it's still not quite warm enough for things to grow yet. See, there's seeds on the ground from when there used to be lots of squash stored in here, which is what we call curing, and that's when it sits in a warmer place and it gets sweeter even after it's been harvested. In a few months, when the farmers start planting things for the spring, they're first going to plant them in these little trays here, and then as they get bigger, you'll put them in these pots. And then eventually they'll be big enough to go into the ground in the greenhouse or maybe out in the field. But we keep them in here first so that they can be in a warm environment before it's warm outside. So here we are in the fields, which is where normally you'd be seeing a lot of vegetables growing like squash and kale and cabbage. Here it looks pretty flat. This green stuff that looks just like grass is actually winter rye, which is planted because it returns some of the nutrients to the soil that other vegetables take out.
Are at the beehives. I just took a look and saw that there's some bees that are still active because it's a sunny, warm day. We're a little bit quieter when we come to the bees because we don't want to disturb them, like probably some of you remember on our field trips. Bees right now are in their hives. They're not quite hibernating. They're all in this big cluster, huddling up for warmth. And the queen bee is in the center of the cluster, staying really nice and warm. They're doing a little dance, they're vibrating. And the bees on the outside of the cluster switch spaces with the bees on the inside of the cluster so that they can all take turns being a little bit colder and a little bit warmer. And when it's a day like today, when it's a little bit warmer and the sun's out, the bees can go outside and separate from their cluster. Summer, where does all the produce go after it's grown out on the farm? It comes back up here to the farm store and people come buy it. I'm standing in front of an empty stand right now, but in the farm season, it's full of beautiful produce. And at Crimson and Clover Farm, There are some people who spend money at the beginning of the farm season, and then they can come every single week and pick up a whole bag of vegetables. It's called a CSA, which stands for Community Supported Agriculture. The farm store inside this really big red barn is kind of like a grocery store, but it's definitely different because all of the things inside it were either grown here or grown really close by. So there's eggs in there that were grown by a local egg farmer, and there's soaps and meat, there's maple syrup, there's different things that someone might want, and they were all grown really close by.